The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty street of Wallace, Idaho, as Emma Hartford pressed her small face against the window of Mrs. Pemberton's boarding house, watching a cowboy dismount his horse with the kind of easy grace that spoke of years in the saddle. She did not know then that this moment in September of 1882 would change everything, that the man tying his bay gelding to the hitching post would become her salvation when all seemed lost. "Get away from that window, girl," Mrs. Pemberton snapped, her voice sharp as broken glass. "The gentleman from Boys arrives on the afternoon train, and you will need to have your things packed and ready. He has no patience for tardiness." Emma's heart sank like a stone dropped into a well. She was 10 years old, small for her age, with tangled auburn hair and eyes the color of new spring leaves. For 3 years she had lived in this boarding house after her parents died of fever, working for her keep by scrubbing floors and washing dishes until her hands were raw. Now Mrs. Pemberton had arranged for her to be sent east to work in a textile mill, claiming it was for the girl's own good, though Emma suspected it had more to do with the payment the mill agent offered for young workers. The cowboy pushed through the door, bringing with him the smell of leather and sage. He was tall and lean, perhaps 25 years old, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of whiskey in lamplight. His dark hair needed cutting, and several days of stubble shadowed his jaw. When he removed his hat, Emma noticed how his gaze swept the room with a watchfulness that suggested he had seen more of the world than most men twice his age. "Madam," he said, his voice low and respectful. "Name is Logan Xavier. I am looking for a hot meal and information about homesteading land to the north." Mrs. Pemberton's demeanor changed instantly, her voice turning honey-sweet as she gestured toward the dining room. "Of course, Mr. Xavier. Emma, fetch this gentleman some of the beef stew and fresh bread. And be quick about it." Emma hurried to the kitchen, ladling generous portions of the rich stew into a bowl. Her hands trembled slightly as she carried the tray to where Logan had seated himself near the window. Up close, she could see the kindness in his weathered face, the laugh lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he had not always lived such a solitary life. "Thank you, miss," he said, and his genuine smile made something warm bloom in Emma's chest. "You are welcome, sir," she whispered, then fled back to the kitchen before Mrs. Pemberton could scold her for lingering. But Logan Xavier noticed things. He noticed the too thin frame beneath Emma's worn dress, the way she flinched when Mrs. Pemberton spoke, the haunted look in those green eyes. He had seen that look before in the mirror during his own childhood, before his uncle had taken him in and taught him to work cattle and live with honor. He asked casual questions as he ate, learning that Wallace was a silver mining town nestled in the Idaho panhandle, that Mrs. Pemberton took in orphans and transients for what she called Christian charity, and that a certain young girl would be leaving on the afternoon train. After his meal, Logan stood and approached the proprietress. "Mrs. Pemberton, I could not help but overhear about the child being sent away. What are her circumstances?" The older woman's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Emma, she is an orphan, has been for 3 years. I have done my Christian duty by her, but I cannot afford to keep feeding a mouth that contributes so little. A mill in Massachusetts has agreed to take her on. She will learn a trade." Logan's jaw tightened. He knew what those eastern mills were like, had heard stories of children working 16-hour days in dangerous conditions, their youth ground away between the machinery and the overseer's demands. What if someone were willing to adopt her, Mrs. Pemberton blinked in surprise. "Adopt her? You mean take legal guardianship?" "Yes, madam. I have a homestead claim about 20 miles north of here, good land near a creek with timber for building. It is not much yet, just a cabin and a start on a barn, but it is honest and clean. A child could have a proper life there. A single man raising a girl child, that would not be proper. More proper than sending her to a mill where she will likely be dead of consumption before she sees 15, Logan said, his voice hard. I had family who cared for me when I needed it most. I would do the same for this girl. Mrs. Pemberton studied him for a long moment, calculating. The mill agent had promised her $20, but this cowboy looked like he might pay more to ease his conscience. $40, she said finally. To compensate me for the money I will lose and the years of care I have provided. Logan's hands clenched at his sides. It was extortion, plain and simple, but he had saved his wages carefully over the past 5 years. 30, he countered. And I will need proper documentation of the adoption, legal and binding. They haggled like horse traders while Emma listened from the kitchen doorway, hardly daring to breathe. When they finally settled on $35 and a trip to the lawyer's office, she felt tears sting her eyes for the first time in months. She had taught herself not to cry, had learned that tears only earned more punishment, but now they came unbidden, tracking clean lines down her dusty cheeks. Within 2 hours, the papers were signed and witnessed. Logan Xavier was now the legal guardian of Emma Hartford, and Mrs. Pemberton was $35 richer. Emma stood in the lawyer's office clutching a small cloth bundle containing everything she owned in the world, hardly believing that her life had just changed so dramatically. Logan knelt down so he could look her in the eye. Emma, I want you to understand something. I am not your father and I will not pretend to be, but I give you my word that I will keep you safe, fed, and warm. You will work because everyone on a homestead works, but you will be treated fairly. Do you understand? She nodded, finding her voice. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. You can call me Logan. Now we have a ride ahead of us and I would like to reach home before dark. Are you afraid of horses? No, sir. I mean no, Logan. He smiled at that, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. Good. Have you ever ridden before? Only once, when my father was alive. Then you will ride with me today, and later I will teach you to ride properly. Every person in this territory needs to know how to handle a horse. They left Wallace as the afternoon sun began its westward descent, Logan's gelding carrying them both with patient strength. Emma sat in front of him in the saddle, acutely aware of the strong arm that kept her secure and the gentle way he spoke to his horse, a bay named Ranger. The land around them was breathtaking, thick forests of pine and fir giving way to meadows dotted with wildflowers. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still holding patches of snow even in September. It is beautiful here, Emma said softly. It is, Logan agreed. Winters are hard and the work never ends, but I have never seen country more worth fighting for. My uncle homesteaded in Montana when I was about your age. He taught me that land could heal a person if you let it. Is your uncle still in Montana? No. He died 2 years back, and I decided to strike out for myself. Idaho territory seemed like it might have space enough for a man to build something lasting. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, following a well-worn trail through the forest. Emma noticed how Logan constantly watched their surroundings, his gaze sweeping the tree line and the path ahead. It made her feel protected in a way she had not felt since her parents died. Logan, she asked hesitantly, why did you help me? You do not even know me. He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old memories. When I was 8 years old, my parents died in a riverboat accident. I had no other family except my uncle, and it took him 3 months to find me. In that time, I was passed between people who saw me as free labor or a burden. When my uncle finally came, he was not a wealthy man or a particularly warm one, but he gave me a chance at a real life. I suppose I saw you standing in that boarding house and remembered what it felt like to be helpless and alone. If I can give you the same chance my uncle gave me, then maybe some of the debt gets paid forward." Emma absorbed this, understanding more than he might have expected. "I will work hard," she promised. "I will earn my keep." "I know you will," Logan said simply. They reached his homestead as the sun touched the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The cabin was small but solid, built from pine logs with a stone chimney at one end. Nearby stood the frame of a barn, still unfinished but showing promise. A creek ran clear and cold about 50 yards from the cabin, its banks lined with willows. Chickens scratched in a fenced coop, and a milk cow grazed in a small pasture. "It is not much yet," Logan said as he helped Emma down from the horse, "but it is home." To Emma, who had spent the last 3 years sleeping on a straw mattress in Mrs. Pemberton's attic, it looked like a palace. The cabin had real glass windows, a plank floor instead of dirt, and when Logan lit the lanterns, she saw handmade furniture that spoke of care and craftsmanship. There was a large bed in one corner, a table with 2 chairs, a cookstove, and shelves holding supplies. "You will take the bed," Logan said, reading her confused expression. "I will make myself a bedroll by the fire until I can build a proper loft or addition to the cabin. A young girl needs privacy." That night, Emma lay in the most comfortable bed she had known in years, her belly full of the simple supper Logan had prepared, beans and cornbread with bacon, and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the wilderness. Owls called in the darkness, and the creek sang its endless song. She heard Logan moving quietly near the fire, settling into his bedroll, and felt a fierce gratitude that made her throat tight. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "Sleep well, Emma," came his reply. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that Emma had never experienced before. Logan woke her before dawn each morning, and they worked together to care for the animals, tend the garden, and continue building the barn. He was patient when teaching her new skills, showing her how to milk the cow, collect eggs without frightening the hens, and identify edible plants in the forest. In the evenings, he taught her to read better using an old Bible and a farming manual, and sometimes he played a harmonica, filling the cabin with melancholy tunes. Emma learned that Logan was a man of few words but great integrity. He never raised his voice in anger, never struck her even when she made mistakes, and always made sure she had enough to eat before he filled his own plate. She learned that he had fought in some conflict he would not discuss, that his uncle had been a hard man but a fair one, and that Logan had once hoped to bring a wife to this homestead before something had gone wrong with those plans. October arrived with its first frost, and Logan announced they needed to make a trip to the nearest town, a small settlement called Kellogg about 15 miles south, to purchase winter supplies. Emma helped him hitch the mule to the wagon they would take, excited at the prospect of seeing more of the world beyond the homestead. Kellogg was smaller than Wallace, just a collection of buildings along a muddy main street, but to Emma it felt like an adventure. Logan guided the wagon to the general store, helping Emma down with his usual courtesy. Inside, the proprietor greeted them warmly, and Logan introduced Emma as his ward, the word holding a note of pride that made her stand a little straighter. While Logan discussed supplies with the storekeeper, Emma wandered to the back of the store where bolts of fabric were displayed. Her worn dress had been patched so many times that more of it was patches than original material, and she ran her fingers wistfully over a length of blue calico. "Pretty, is it not?" Emma jumped and turned to find a woman standing nearby. She was perhaps 23 or 24, with honey-colored hair pinned up beneath a simple bonnet and eyes the color of summer sky. Her dress was practical but well-made, and she carried a basket over one arm. "Yes, madam," Emma said shyly. "Very pretty. Are you new to the area? I have not seen you before, and I thought I knew everyone within 20 miles. I have been living on a homestead north of here. My guardian brought me to town for supplies." The woman's expression brightened with interest. "A homestead to the north. Would that be the Xavier place? I have heard there was a single man proving up land near Silver Creek." "Yes, madam, Logan Xavier. He adopted me about a month ago." "How wonderful," the woman said warmly. "My name is Emma Hartford. I run a small school about 5 miles from here, and I am always looking for new students." "Do you attend school, Emma?" "No, madam, but Logan has been teaching me to read better in the evenings." Eleanor's smile widened. "That is excellent, but you should be learning arithmetic, history, and proper grammar as well. Would you introduce me to Mr. Xavier? I would very much like to discuss your education with him." Emma led Eleanor to where Logan was loading sacks of flour and beans into the wagon. When he saw them approaching, he straightened, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of the young schoolteacher. Emma noticed the way his gaze lingered on Eleanor's face, the way he quickly removed his hat and smoothed his hair. "Logan, this is Miss Emma Hartford. She runs a school and wants to talk to you about my education." "Miss Hartford," Logan said, his voice slightly rougher than usual. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Xavier," Eleanor replied, and Emma noticed the faint blush coloring her cheeks. "I was just telling Emma that I would be delighted to have her attend my school. I teach children from several homesteads in the area, ages 6 to 14. We meet 5 days a week when the weather permits." Logan frowned slightly. "The homestead is quite a distance from Kellogg." "Actually, the schoolhouse is northeast of here, closer to your land than to town. It would be perhaps a 3-mile ride for Emma. Several of my other students travel similar distances." "I could not pay much in the way of tuition," Logan said honestly. "Cash money is scarce on a new homestead." Eleanor waved this away. "I accept payment in goods as readily as coin. Eggs, vegetables, fresh meat, firewood, all are valuable currency in these parts. The important thing is that Emma receives a proper education. No child should grow up unable to read and cipher." Logan considered this, glancing down at Emma. "What do you think? Would you like to attend school?" Emma nodded eagerly. The thought of learning in a real schoolhouse with other children filled her with an excitement she had not felt in years. "Yes, please." "Then it is settled," Logan said, extending his hand to Eleanor. "Thank you, Miss Hartford. This is generous of you." Eleanor shook his hand, and Emma noticed how both of them held the contact just a moment longer than necessary. "Please call me Eleanor. We are neighbors, after all. Why do not you both come by the schoolhouse tomorrow? I can show you around and introduce Emma to the other students. We could have lunch together, and you could see what we will be studying this term." "That sounds fine," Logan said, a rare smile crossing his face. "We will be there." As they drove the wagon home that afternoon, Emma noticed that Logan seemed more thoughtful than usual, occasionally touching the brim of his hat where Eleanor had smiled at him. She felt a small flutter of hope in her chest. Logan had been so kind to her, had given her a home and safety when she had neither. The thought that he might find happiness with someone like Eleanor made her genuinely glad. The next day, Logan took extra care with his appearance, shaving carefully and putting on his better shirt. Emma brushed out her tangled hair and braided it as neatly as she could manage. They rode Ranger together, following Eleanor's directions to a small log building nestled in a clearing surrounded by aspens that would be golden in another few weeks. Alina greeted them at the door wearing a green dress that brought out her eyes. Inside, the schoolhouse was simple but cheerful, with student desks arranged in rows, a large slate board at the front, and shelves holding precious books. A pot-bellied stove stood in the center of the room, ready for the coming winter. "You have done well here," Logan said, genuine admiration in his voice. "It takes dedication to run a school in such remote country." "Education is the foundation of civilization," Alina replied. "I taught in Ohio for 2 years before my family moved west. When my father died last year and my mother decided to return east, I stayed. I love this territory, rough as it is, and I believe these children deserve the same quality of education they would receive in more established places." She showed them around, explaining her teaching methods and the subjects she covered. Emma was delighted by the small library, running her fingers over the spines of books about history, science, and literature. Logan and Alina talked easily, discovering shared views on everything from politics to farming techniques. Alina had prepared a lunch of cold chicken, fresh bread, and apple pie. They ate outside on a blanket spread beneath the aspens, and Emma watched the way Logan and Alina looked at each other when they thought the other was not watching. She had been only 7 when her parents died, but she remembered the way they had looked at each other with that same mixture of interest and shy pleasure. "Emma tells me you only recently homesteaded here," Alina said as they ate. "Where did you come from originally?" "Montana Territory, mostly," Logan said. "My uncle had a ranch near Virginia City. After he died, I drifted for a while, worked cattle drives and hired on at various ranches. I saved my wages and filed my homestead claim here about 1.5 years ago. Been building it up ever since." And Emma. "Forgive me for being direct, but it is unusual for a single man to take on a ward." Logan glanced at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. She wanted Alina to know the truth, wanted this kind woman to understand what Logan had done for her. "I was in Wallace buying supplies and heard about a child being sent east to work in a mill," Logan explained quietly. "I have seen what those places do to children. My own childhood was difficult until my uncle took me in, and I thought maybe I could give Emma the chance someone once gave me. It was not a decision I made lightly, but I have not regretted it for a moment." Alina reached over and squeezed his hand, the gesture natural and warm. "That was a brave and compassionate thing to do. Emma is fortunate to have found you." "I think maybe I am the fortunate one," Logan said, his voice rough with emotion. Emma felt her heart swell. In that moment, sitting beneath the golden aspens with Logan and Alina, she felt something she had thought lost forever. She felt like she belonged to a family. Emma started school the following Monday, riding Ranger the 3 miles with Logan's patient instruction on handling the horse properly. The other students, 7 children ranging from 6 to 13, welcomed her with the easy friendliness of frontier children, who understood that everyone was working hard to survive. Emma threw herself into her studies with fierce determination, soaking up knowledge like parched earth absorbing rain. 3 times a week, Logan found excuses to stop by the schoolhouse, bringing firewood or fresh eggs, helping Alina repair a loose shutter or clear debris from the roof. Emma watched their friendship deepen into something more, saw the way Alina's face lit up when Logan arrived, the way his smiles came more easily when she was near. One evening in late October, Logan asked Emma for her opinion on a matter of great importance. They were sitting by the fire after supper, Emma working on arithmetic problems Alina had assigned while Logan mended a bridle. "Emma, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly." She looked up from her slate, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "Yes." How would you feel if Alina became a more permanent part of our lives? If I were to court her properly with the intention of marriage?" Emma's face broke into a wide smile. "I think that would be wonderful. I really like Alina, and I think you do too." Logan nodded slowly. "I do. I have not felt this way about anyone since a long time ago. But you are my responsibility now, Emma. Your feelings matter in this decision. If Alina were to become my wife, she would be part of your life as well. I need to know you would be comfortable with that." "Logan, you gave me everything when I had nothing," Emma said seriously. "You saved me from being sent away to a terrible place. If Alina makes you happy, then I am happy. Besides, she is wonderful. She is kind and smart and patient, and I think she would be good for both of us." Relief washed over Logan's face. "Thank you, Emma. That means more to me than you might realize." The courtship that followed was proper but clearly mutual in affection. Alina began joining them for Sunday suppers at the homestead, arriving with fresh baked goods and staying to help with chores. She taught Emma fancier cooking techniques and showed her how to sew properly, skills Mrs. Pemberton had never bothered to share. In turn, Alina learned about homestead life, proving herself capable of hard work and uncomplaining in the face of difficulties. November brought the first serious snow, and with it came a crisis that would test them all. Emma was at school when the storm hit, a fierce blizzard that roared down from the mountains with terrifying speed. Alina immediately dismissed the students, but before Emma could start for home, the wind became so violent that visibility dropped to mere feet. "You will stay here," Alina said firmly, pulling Emma close. "Logan will know you are safe with me. We have plenty of firewood and supplies." They huddled near the stove as the storm raged outside, the wind howling like a living thing. Emma tried not to show her fear, but Alina seemed to sense it, wrapping a blanket around them both and telling stories to distract her. They spoke of Alina's childhood in Ohio, of her father who had been a teacher as well, of her dreams for the school and the community. "You love Logan?" Emma asked suddenly, the question slipping out in the intimacy of the storm-enclosed space. Alina was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Yes, I do. Is that all right with you?" "More than all right. I hoped you did. He deserves someone who loves him. He is the best person I have ever known." "He is indeed special," Alina agreed. "And so are you, Emma. Logan speaks of you with such pride. He tells me how hard you work, how quick you are to learn, how brave you have been." "He talks about me, constantly," Alina said with a laugh. "I think fatherhood, even of the unexpected variety, suits him very well." The storm lasted 2 days. When it finally broke, Logan arrived on snowshoes, having fought his way through drifts that came up to his waist in places. His face was raw from the cold, his beard crusted with ice, but his eyes blazed with relief when he saw them safe and warm. "Thank God," he said roughly, pulling Emma into a fierce hug. "I have been out of my mind with worry." "Alina kept me safe," Emma said against his chest. "We had plenty of wood and food, and she told me stories." Logan looked at Alina over Emma's head, and something passed between them that needed no words. When he finally released Emma, he crossed to Alina and took her hands in his. "Alina Hartley, I know this is not the most romantic setting, and I had planned to do this more properly, but I have to ask. These past 2 days, not knowing if you were both safe, made me realize I cannot waste any more time. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Alina's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Logan Xavier, I would be honored to marry you." They married in early December at the small church in Kellogg, with Emma serving as Alina's attendant and several neighboring homesteaders as witnesses. Alina wore a dress of deep blue wool that she had sewn herself, and Logan wore his best suit, purchased years ago and carefully preserved. Emma wore a new dress that Alina had made for her, the blue calico she had admired in the general store, and she carried a small bouquet of evergreen boughs tied with ribbon. The ceremony was simple but moving. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Emma saw tears on Logan's weathered cheeks as he kissed his bride. The small congregation cheered, and Emma felt such pure happiness that she thought her heart might burst. They returned to the homestead as a family, Logan driving the wagon with Alina beside him and Emma nestled between them beneath heavy blankets. Alina had brought her few possessions, mostly books and teaching supplies, and the cabin that had seemed so comfortable to Emma now felt almost crowded with 3 people and Alina's belongings. "We will need to build that addition sooner than I planned," Logan said with a laugh as they unloaded the wagon. "Come spring, I will add 2 rooms, one for Emma and one for us. Until then, Emma can keep the main bed and Alina and I will make do with the loft space." Alina proved herself as capable a homesteader as she was a teacher. She rose before dawn to help with chores, learning to milk the cow and tend the chickens with cheerful determination. She and Emma worked together to preserve food for winter, putting up jars of vegetables and meat, baking bread, and making soap. In the evenings, the 3 of them sat by the fire, Alina and Logan holding hands while Emma practiced her reading aloud or worked on lessons. Winter deepened, bringing more snow and bitter cold, but the cabin remained warm and filled with laughter. Logan taught Emma to ice skate on the frozen creek, and Alina showed them both how to make taffy from molasses and snow. They celebrated Christmas with a small feast and gifts they had made for each other. Emma giving Logan mittens she had knitted and Alina a carved wooden bookmark, while they gave her a beautiful doll that Alina had sewn and Logan had carved a face for. "This is the best Christmas I have ever had," Emma said that night, clutching her doll and watching the firelight dance on the walls. "Thank you both for giving me a family." Alina gathered her close, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you for accepting me into yours, sweet girl. You and Logan are the greatest gifts I could have asked for." As winter gave way to early spring of 1883, Alina began showing signs of pregnancy. Emma noticed first, seeing how Alina grew tired more easily and how certain smells made her queasy. When Alina finally confirmed the news, Logan was overcome with joy, sweeping his wife off her feet and spinning her around the cabin while Emma laughed at his uncharacteristic exuberance. "A baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a baby." "Not until August," Alina cautioned, but she was smiling. "We have plenty of time to prepare." True to his word, Logan began construction on the cabin addition as soon as the ground thawed enough to dig a foundation. Emma helped as much as she could, fetching tools and holding boards while Logan cut and hammered. Neighbors stopped by to lend assistance, the frontier tradition of helping each other raising the walls faster than Logan could have managed alone. By May, Emma had her own small room with a real bed, a window overlooking the creek, and shelves for her few treasures. Logan and Alina had a proper bedroom with a door for privacy, and the main cabin area felt spacious again with a larger table and more seating. Alina continued teaching through the spring term, though she moved more slowly as her pregnancy progressed. Emma helped grade papers and prepare lessons, discovering that she enjoyed teaching almost as much as learning. Logan hovered protectively over both his wife and ward, making sure they did not overwork themselves and fretting about Alina's health. "I am fine, Logan," Alina said with amused exasperation one evening in June. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. You do not need to treat me like spun glass. I just want you safe," he said gruffly. Both of you." Emma watched them from across the room, seeing the love that flowed between them like a visible current. She thought about how different her life might have been if Logan had not walked into Mrs. Pemberton's boarding house that September day, if he had not seen a frightened child and decided to help. Now she had a home, a family, and a future that looked bright with promise. In July, Alina stopped teaching to prepare for the baby's arrival. A midwife from Kellogg visited to check on her and pronounced her healthy and strong. Logan built a beautiful cradle from pine, carving little animals along the sides, while Emma and Alina sewed tiny gowns and blankets. "Have you thought about names?" Emma asked one afternoon as they sat on the porch shelling peas. "We have discussed it," Alina said, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "If it is a boy, Logan wants to name him after his uncle Samuel. If it is a girl, I am fond of the name Rose." "Those are both lovely names," Emma said. "I think this baby is very lucky to have you and Logan as parents." Alina reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "And you as a sister. You have been such a help to me, Emma. I do not know what I would have done without you these past months." Emma felt a warm glow at those words. She had gone from being an unwanted orphan to being an essential part of a family. The transformation still amazed her sometimes when she stopped to think about it. The baby arrived on a hot August afternoon when the sky was clear and blue. Logan rode hard to fetch the midwife while Emma stayed with Alina, holding her hand and bringing cool cloths for her forehead. Alina was calm throughout the labor, though Emma could see it took all her strength. "You are doing wonderfully," Emma said, echoing words she had heard the midwife say at other births in the area. "Just keep breathing like that." "Emma," Alina gasped between contractions, "I need you to know something. Whatever happens, you are my daughter in all the ways that matter. I love you as much as I will love this baby. Never doubt that." "Nothing is going to happen," Emma said fiercely. "You are strong and the baby is healthy. Everything will be fine." And it was. When Logan returned with the midwife, Alina was well into labor. 3 hours later, as the sun began to set, a baby's cry filled the cabin. Logan and Emma rushed inside to find the midwife holding a red-faced, squalling infant. "You have a son, Mr. Xavier," the midwife announced with a smile. "A healthy boy with good lungs." Logan approached the bed where Alina lay exhausted but radiant. She held out her arms for the baby, and the midwife placed the tiny bundle in them. Emma peered over Logan's shoulder, getting her first good look at her new brother. "He is beautiful," she whispered. "Samuel Logan Xavier," Alina said softly, looking up at her husband. "Sam for short. What do you think?" Logan could not speak for a moment, too overcome with emotion. Finally, he found his voice. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Alina." Emma helped care for baby Sam with enthusiasm, learning to change him and rock him when he fussed. She sang to him the songs her own mother had sung to her, passing on the fragments of memory she still carried. Logan was a devoted father, amazed by every tiny sound and movement his son made. As September arrived, marking 1 year since Logan had adopted Emma, the family gathered for a small celebration. Alina had baked a cake, and Logan had a gift wrapped in brown paper. "Emma, when I took you in a year ago, I thought I was doing a good deed, paying forward the kindness my uncle showed me," Logan said as they sat around the table. "What I did not realize was how much you would give to us. You welcomed Alina without jealousy. You helped us through difficult times, and you have been the best big sister Sam could have asked for. This past year has been the happiest of my life, and much of that is because of you." Emma unwrapped the gift to find a beautiful leather journal and a set of pencils. On the first page, Logan had written in his careful hand, "The Journal of Emma Hartford Xavier, September 1883. Xavier, Emma looked up, her eyes filling with tears. "We want to make it official," Alina said gently. "If you agree, we would like to legally adopt you as our daughter. You would be Emma Xavier, truly part of our family in every way." Emma could not speak through her tears, so she simply nodded and threw her arms around them both. Baby Sam, cradled in Alina's lap, made a gurgling sound as if adding his approval. The legal paperwork was completed in October, and Emma Hartford became Emma Xavier. She wrote about it extensively in her new journal, pouring out her gratitude and joy onto the pages. School resumed in September, and Emma returned as a student but also as Alina's assistant, helping the younger children with their letters while Alina managed the older students. Winter came again, but this time the cabin was full of warmth and life. Sam grew chubby and healthy, learning to smile and laugh. Logan's homestead prospered, the barn completed and livestock thriving. Alina talked about expanding the school, perhaps building a larger schoolhouse to accommodate more students as more families moved into the area. Years passed in this way, each season bringing its own rhythms and challenges. Emma grew from a thin, frightened 10-year-old into a confident young woman. She excelled in her studies, showing particular aptitude for teaching and writing. When she turned 15, she began formally assisting Alina at the school, and by 17 she was teaching the younger students on her own. Sam grew into a bright, energetic boy who adored his big sister and followed her everywhere. Emma taught him to read before he was 4, patient with his questions and endless energy. Logan expanded the homestead, adding more land and livestock, becoming one of the most successful farmers in the area. Alina's school gained an excellent reputation, drawing students from as far as 20 miles away. But more important than any material success was the love that continued to grow within their family. Logan and Alina's marriage remained strong, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. They faced hardships together, bad seasons and illness, loss and disappointment, but they always came through stronger for having weathered the storm side by side. Emma watched their love and learned from it. She saw how Logan treated Alina as an equal partner, how they made decisions together and supported each other's dreams. She saw how Alina respected Logan's strength while being strong herself, how she maintained her own identity while building a life with him. These lessons would shape Emma's own future relationships, teaching her to value herself and to look for a partner who would do the same. When Emma turned 18 in the spring of 1890, the family threw a party at the homestead. Neighbors came from miles around, bringing food and gifts, celebrating the young woman who had become such an integral part of the community. Emma wore a dress of yellow muslin that Alina had helped her sew, her auburn hair pinned up in a style that made her look sophisticated and grown. Logan pulled her aside during the celebration, leading her to the porch where they could talk privately. "Emma, I have something for you." He handed her a small wooden box, and when she opened it, she found a delicate gold locket inside. "It was my mother's," Logan explained. "My uncle gave it to me before he died, said I should give it to my daughter someday. I cannot think of anyone more deserving." Emma opened the locket to find 2 small photographs inside, one of Logan and Alina, the other of her holding baby Sam shortly after he was born. "Logan, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything. You have given me more than you know, Emma. When I adopted you that day in Wallace, I was just a lonely man trying to do the right thing. You gave me purpose, showed me I was capable of being more than I thought I was. You helped Alina see that I was worth taking a chance on. You have been the foundation this family was built on, and I want you to know how grateful I am that you came into my life." Emma threw her arms around him, crying happy tears against his chest like she had when she was 10. "You saved me, Logan. You gave me everything." "We saved each other," he said simply. That summer, a young man named Daniel Cooper began attending church services in Kellogg. He was 20 years old, the son of a rancher from Montana who had come to Idaho to start his own spread. He was handsome and polite, with an easy smile and a respectful manner that immediately caught Emma's attention. Eleanor noticed the way Emma watched Daniel, saw the blush that colored her daughter's cheeks when he spoke to her after services. She mentioned it to Logan one evening after the children were asleep. "Emma is a grown woman now," Logan said, though his voice carried a note of reluctance. "I suppose it was inevitable that young men would start coming around." "He seems nice," Eleanor said diplomatically. "His family has a good reputation. I will want to meet him properly," Logan said firmly. "Any man who wants to court Emma will have to prove himself worthy." Eleanor hid a smile. Logan, the protective father, was endearing, even if Emma might find him a bit overwhelming. "Of course, dear. I would expect nothing less." Daniel Cooper did call on Emma, arriving at the homestead the following Sunday with wildflowers and a nervous expression. Logan subjected him to a lengthy interrogation about his intentions, his prospects, and his views on everything from politics to religion. Daniel answered honestly and respectfully, never losing his composure even under Logan's intense scrutiny. Finally, Logan grudgingly gave his permission for Daniel to court Emma, though he made it clear that he would be watching closely. Emma was both embarrassed and touched by Logan's protectiveness. Eleanor pulled her aside later and told her to enjoy her courtship, that Logan would adjust to the idea of her growing up eventually. The courtship progressed slowly over the following months. Daniel proved himself a gentleman, always respectful of Emma's virtue and Logan's rules. He helped with work around the homestead, earning Logan's respect if not quite his full approval. Emma found herself genuinely caring for Daniel, appreciating his kindness and the way he listened when she spoke about her dreams and ambitions. By Christmas of 1890, Daniel asked Logan for permission to marry Emma. Logan, who had grudgingly come to respect the young man, gave his consent with the condition that they wait until spring so Emma could finish out the school term helping Eleanor. They married in May of 1891, a beautiful ceremony at the church in Kellogg with Sam, now 8 years old, serving as Daniel's best man. Emma wore a dress of white lace that Eleanor had spent months sewing, and she carried a bouquet of wildflowers picked from the meadow near the homestead. When Logan walked her down the aisle, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I am so proud of you," he whispered. "You have grown into an extraordinary woman." "Because I had extraordinary people raising me," Emma whispered back. Daniel and Emma settled on his ranch about 30 miles north, close enough to visit regularly, but far enough to build their own life. Emma continued teaching occasionally, traveling to Eleanor's school when needed, and she threw herself into ranch life with the same determination she had shown on Logan's homestead. Over the next years, Emma and Daniel had 3 children, a boy they named Logan in honor of Emma's adoptive father, a girl they called Eleanor, and another boy they named Samuel. They built a prosperous ranch and a strong marriage, facing challenges together and building a legacy they could be proud of. Emma visited the homestead often, bringing her children to see their grandparents. Logan and Eleanor doted on their grandchildren, and Sam loved having nieces and nephews to play with. The family gathered for holidays and celebrations, the bonds between them remaining strong despite the distance. Logan and Eleanor had 2 more children of their own over the years, a daughter named Grace born in 1893, and another son named Matthew born in 1896. The homestead rang with children's laughter, and the cabin was expanded twice more to accommodate the growing family. Eleanor continued teaching until she was in her 40s, finally retiring to focus on her own children and her role as community matriarch. Logan's homestead became one of the most successful in northern Idaho, and he was frequently consulted by newer homesteaders seeking advice. But through all the changes and growth, the core of the family remained the same. Logan and Eleanor's love never wavered, growing deeper and more comfortable with each passing year. They remained partners in every sense, facing life's challenges together and celebrating its joys side by side. Emma never forgot where she had come from or how close she had come to a very different fate. She told her children the story of how Logan had saved her from being sent to the mills, how he had adopted her, and then found Eleanor. She made sure they understood the value of kindness, of seeing beyond yourself to help someone in need. On a warm September afternoon in 1902, 20 years after Logan had first walked into Mrs. Pemberton's boarding house, the family gathered at the homestead for a celebration. Emma was now 30 years old, a mother of 3 and a respected member of her community. Logan was 45, his dark hair now threaded with silver but his eyes still sharp and kind. Eleanor was 43, still beautiful and gracious, with laugh lines at the corners of her eyes that spoke of years of happiness. Sam was 19, preparing to leave for college in the fall. Grace was 9, precocious and bright, already showing signs of following her mother into teaching. Matthew was 6, a miniature version of his father with Logan's quiet strength and watchful eyes. Emma's children played with their aunts and uncles, the age differences mattering little in the chaos of family. As the sun began to set, Logan called for quiet. 20 years ago today, I made a decision that changed my life. I met a frightened little girl in a boarding house in Wallace, and something told me I needed to help her. I could not have known then how that decision would shape everything that came after, how Emma would bring Eleanor into my life, how our family would grow and flourish. I just knew I had to try to do the right thing. He paused, his voice growing rough with emotion. Emma, you were never a burden or a duty. From the moment I brought you home, you were my daughter in my heart. You taught me how to love, how to be better than I thought I could be. You gave me the courage to reach for happiness with Eleanor, and together we have built something more beautiful than I ever dreamed possible. Eleanor took his hand, tears streaming down her face. Emma stood as well, her own eyes wet. Logan, Eleanor, you gave me everything. A home, a family, love and safety. You showed me what it means to be truly seen and valued. Everything good in my life stems from that day you decided to help a child you did not know. I hope I have made you proud. Every single day, Logan said firmly. Every single day you make us proud. The family gathered together as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, the same mountains that had watched over Logan's arrival 20 years ago standing eternal in the distance. In that moment, surrounded by the people they loved, they were complete. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow as they always do. Logan and Eleanor grew old together, their love remaining constant even as their bodies slowed and their hair turned white. They celebrated the birth of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, watching their family tree spread and flourish. Emma remained close to them always, visiting often and making sure they wanted for nothing. She cared for them in their final years with the same devotion they had shown her as a child. Logan died peacefully in 1925 at the age of 68, Eleanor's hand in his and Emma at his bedside. His last words were of gratitude for the life he had been given, for the family he had found. Eleanor followed him 2 years later, slipping away quietly in her sleep at 70 years old. Emma found her mother's journal after she passed, filled with entries about her love for Logan, her pride in Emma, and her joy in the family they had built together. On the last page, Alina had written, "I came west looking for adventure and purpose. I found both in a one-room schoolhouse and a homestead cabin. But more than that, I found love in its purest form with a good man and a daughter who chose to accept me. I have been blessed beyond measure." Sam inherited the homestead, keeping it in the family and maintaining the traditions Logan and Alina had established. Emma's children and grandchildren continued to visit, the property becoming a gathering place for the sprawling Xavier clan. The cabin was eventually preserved as a historical site, a testament to the homesteaders who had carved lives out of the wilderness. But the true legacy was not in the land or the buildings. It was in the love that had started with one man's decision to help a child in need, love that had grown and multiplied across generations. It was in the values of kindness, courage, and compassion that Emma passed to her children and they to theirs. It was in the story that was told and retold, of the cowboy who had adopted an orphan girl and found not just a daughter, but a wife and a family and a life filled with purpose and joy. Emma lived to be 87 years old, dying in 1959 surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. In her final days, she spoke often of Logan and Alina, remembering the love they had shown her and the home they had built together. She held the locket Logan had given her on her 18th birthday, the photographs inside faded but still precious. "Remember," she told her gathered family in those last hours, "that kindness matters. That choosing to help someone, even when it is difficult or inconvenient, can change the course of lives. Your great-grandfather Logan saved me, and in doing so, he created all of this." She gestured weakly at the room full of people. "Every one of you exists because one man decided to do the right thing. Never forget that." They did not forget. The story of Emma and Logan and Alina became part of the family's identity, passed down through generations. The values they had lived by continued to shape their descendants, creating ripples that spread far beyond what any of them could have imagined that September day in 1882. The homestead still stood well into the 21st century, carefully preserved and maintained by the Xavier Family Foundation. Visitors came from across the country to see where this remarkable story had unfolded, to walk the land that Logan had claimed and Alina had loved, to stand in the cabin where Emma had found safety and home. But more than a tourist attraction or a historical curiosity, the homestead remained a symbol of what was possible when people chose love over fear, compassion over indifference, hope over despair. It was a reminder that families could be built in unexpected ways, that love was not limited by blood but expanded by choice, and that one act of kindness could echo across generations. In the end, Logan Xavier had been right all those years ago when he told Emma they had saved each other. She had given him purpose and shown him he was capable of more than he had believed. He had given her safety and love and a future bright with possibility. Together, with Alina, they had built something that transcended their individual lives, creating a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone. The little girl who had pressed her face against Mrs. Pemberton's window, watching a cowboy dismount his horse, could never have imagined how her life would unfold. The lonely cowboy who had walked into that boarding house looking for a meal and information could never have predicted he would walk out with a daughter and find a wife and build a family that would flourish for generations. But that was the beauty of their story, its beautiful unpredictability. The way that choosing kindness and opening your heart could lead to transformations beyond imagining. It was a story of love in all its forms, the love of a father for his daughter, a husband for his wife, a mother for her children, a family for each other. It was a story that proved that sometimes the families we choose are just as powerful and enduring as the ones we are born into. And it all began on a dusty street in Wallace, Idaho, in September of 1882, when a cowboy looked at an orphan girl and decided to help, when he chose compassion over convenience and changed both their lives forever. That choice created ripples that spread across time, touching countless lives and proving that one person truly could make a difference, that love truly could conquer fear, and that family was not about blood, but about the bonds we choose to forge and honor. The sun continued to rise and set over the Idaho mountains. The seasons continued their eternal cycle, and the Xavier family continued to grow and thrive, forever shaped by the love story that had begun with an adoption and a marriage and a commitment to building something beautiful together. Logan and Alina and Emma had been gone for many years, but their love remained, living on in the hearts and lives of all those who came after, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, courage, and love.